Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 617 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's show features Katie. Katie is a young mother who has type 1 diabetes. And we will talk about all things type 1 diabetes and babies. Babies from a parenting perspective, type 1 diabetes from a person's perspective. My thoughts from my perspective. You'll listen from your perspective. And we'll all form new perspectives. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. I need you to go to the T1D Exchange and fill out their survey. T1Dexchange.org/juicebox. You have to be a U.S. resident who has type 1 diabetes or a U.S. resident who is the caregiver of someone with type 1 diabetes. If you are those things, your answers to your completely private questions that are HIPAA compliant will help people living with type 1, and they'll benefit the show. T1Dexchange.org/juicebox. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. The podcast is also sponsored. Well, I just got shot out of a cannon. The podcast. Hold on. Sorry about that. Let me lighten that up a little bit. The podcast is also sponsored today by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Learn more and get started at contournext.com/juicebox. There are links in the show notes and link. What was I saying? And links at Juicebox Podcast. What is going on? There are links in the show notes and links at juiceboxpodcast.com. If you can't remember, contournext.com/juicebox and gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox.
Hear him right now? He's cooing a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to record right now. I don't want to miss it.
Okay.
So you're being recorded.
All right.
So you are holding a 9-week-old baby?
Yes, I am.
Oh.
So it has been quite the 9 weeks for sure.
Really? Well, we'll talk about it, I guess.
Yes.
So we'll just let everybody know that we're hoping the baby's going to fall asleep, and the baby might not fall asleep, and we'll see.
Yes, I've been doing my best, but, babies are unpredictable is what I'm learning.
Yeah, no, you're figuring that out, are you?
Yeah, because when I scheduled this with you, I was still, I don't even know if I was in my 3rd trimester yet. So I was like, oh yeah, by then I should be fine. Like we can do a podcast recording. I was very ignorant to, what it takes to take care of a baby. Katie, first child.
Here's when you'll be fine. There'll be a split second before your death where you'll feel calm, they say.
You're like, I made it this far. They're still alive.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's 65, 75, 80 years from now and you're old and withered and you're like, oh, I think this is it. I'm slipping away. You're still going to be worried about something or somebody right up until the very moment you go, ooh, wait. And that's over. So, yeah, making a baby is the sure way to be worried for the rest of your life. That's for sure.
I know. It was funny. Have you seen that movie, The Quiet Place?
I have.
It's I had watched the first one whenever it came out, and my husband and I just watched the second one, and I was like, this is not a movie for a new parent, because all it is about the parental fears you have of taking care of your children. And I was just like, man, all of a sudden now I know what it feels like. To be constantly worried. Yeah,
it's what they call a dumpster fire. So
yes.
and it's just the magnification of it is something you're not prepared for, really.
Yeah, it's
because you've been worried about other things before in your life.
Exactly. Right. And, we're going to start daycare. So that's a whole new thing to start worrying about. And then I'm sure it just gets harder, not easier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but I haven't felt it get easier yet. And my kids are 21 and 17. So.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, my parents tell me that about myself. They're like, we're still worried about you. I'm like, well, now you should be worried about me because I'm taking care of a child.
Yeah. because there aren't laws to protect this baby from me, and I don't know what I'm doing.
I know. They, just chucked us out of the hospital. They didn't ensure I was a fit parent or anything.
It's apparently up to you. Well, tell everyone your name, so then we can get started. Although we're pretty started.
My name is Katie, and I am a type 1 diabetic, diagnosed as an adult.
How old were you when you were diagnosed?
27.
Oh.
So I had the classic misdiagnosis of type 2 diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
It was very strange. I was showing no symptoms. I actually just went into my yearly physical and did the blood work and everything. And then like a week later, she was like, your blood sugar is 400, diagnosis type 2 diabetes. This was all in the portal, by the way, like not like a phone call to like break the news. I was like, what do you think? I was like, this is a lie. I was like, I didn't know anything about blood sugar. I was like 400. I was like, so I called them. I was like, listen, I know I was supposed to be fasting, but I had like 3 donuts before I came in. I was like, so I think that's why my blood sugar is 400. And like the poor nurse is like, oh, honey, like donuts shouldn't put you at 400 if you don't have diabetes.
Oh, honey, 3 donuts. That's a different indication of a different problem you have.
I know, exactly. And so like, then I thought I had type 2 diabetes. I came in again for like the A1C. The A1C was 9.1. Still like no symptoms really. Like if anything, I had been like slightly gaining weight, wasn't overly thirsty, wasn't going to the bathroom a lot. So it was still just very strange. But the A1C didn't lie. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm type 2, and went on like a super low carb diet. Was doing finger pricks and no insulin. But then thankfully my mom was like, convinced me. She's like, you need to get into an endocrinologist, just to see, if this could be type 1. And I was like, and still at the time I didn't know much about diabetes. So I was like, no, type 1 is what you get when you're a kid. And I would have known I had this.
Mm-hmm.
But she persisted. And so I was like, fine, I'll make an appointment. But ironically, like it was hard to get into the endocrinologist because they were like, oh, like, are you having trouble like controlling your diabetes? And I was like, well, no, actually now I have it like really like good on this low carb diet. And it's because I was like honeymooning. So like my numbers were looking great. And they're like, well, we don't really like to see patients until like you've been working with your primary for a while and like things just aren't going well.
That you're making me think of 2 things. Okay. First thing, I love that your mom was right. And now you're holding a baby, and one day that baby's going to look at you and be like, no, I think you're wrong, lady. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yes.
That's fascinating. That's the circle of life, in case anybody's wondering. And the second thing is I started thinking, you know how they say, you hear people say constantly, like, teachers are underpaid. It's an important job and we should pay teachers more. That's an interesting statement because they don't mean we should pay bad teachers more. They mean we should offer more money to be teachers so we get really qualified people to be teachers. Yeah. I was just thinking maybe doctors' offices should more value the knowledge of the person answering the phone.
Yes.
And not to say that the people doing the job right now couldn't be coached up and taught.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe listen, I'm the person that makes phone calls for everybody in my house, and I speak to doctors. And if you want to know the difference between me calling Dr. Benito, who was on and did the thyroid episode with me, and speaking to her, and a experience I had just last week, just trying to set up an MRI for my son. I was speaking to a person at the ortho that I don't know understood what I was saying. And when I asked a simple yes or no question, I don't want to out anybody like horribly, but I asked a simple yes or no question. I said, is it possible that your pre-certification department, which by the way, my insurance doesn't need a pre-certification, but we'll get that. Let's let that go. My question was, is it possible that your pre-certification department has not yet reached out to my insurance company? That was the only question. Is it possible that they haven't reached out yet? And I am not lying to you. 35 words into her 3rd sentence, she had not come close to answering that question. And she was trying so hard to use big words and sound like she knew what she was talking about. And all of this effort was going into, it felt like her trying to make me believe that she
knew what she was talking about.
Yes, Katie, yes. Okay. And so I'm lucky for her and lucky for me in the world that I've matured, because 30 years ago, I would have been like, you're not answering my question. And I would have just said it again. But instead I said something very polite. I was like, oh, I think I wasn't very clear with what I was asking. I just want to know, is it possible? Blah, blah, blah. And I swear to you, she launched back into that diatribe again. I was like, oh my God, imagine if I were to get mad at her or feel frustrated, or maybe I'm not a great communicator. And now we have two bad communicators talking to each other. How often does that happen to people?
Oh, I'm sure every day, which is why they, try to use big words to make it sound like they're the assertive one, knowing what they're talking about,
Yeah. No, for certain.
I'm sure they deal with all sorts of people.
I'm telling you, not forget teachers, but we should pay admins more money at doctors' offices.
Yes, I agree. And I'm sure that they always have a full schedule at this endo office. I'm sure they're told only make appointments for certain type of deals and whatnot. But I even had a referral from my primary, because I went back to my primary and I was like, hey, I just want to get more. I had to phrase it into a way. I was like, I just want to educate myself more on this. Can I go talk to an endo? Instead of just saying hey, where's my, slip to go see an endo to get this taken care of. I really had to sweet talk my way into it. And then I had to convince the woman on the phone. I was like, let's just make an appointment. Let's just see, it was it shouldn't have been that hard. And of course I'm doing this so that I can tell my mom I made an appointment, but I could have easily been I just need to see if I are struggling with this for a while, and then call back in a year or when I'm in DKA,
I want you to remember that feeling the first time that kid you're holding is you do not know what you're talking about. You're lucky to be standing up. I've been watching you since I was a baby, and I don't even know how you're not dead, lady. You can't make one good decision. I have the whole world figured out already. And I love that you made that appointment to shut your mom up, and she was right.
Yep. Oh yeah, she was definitely right. Yeah.
Did you ever tell her?
So yeah.
How you felt? Have you ever told her this?
Oh yeah. She knows, and she was relieved too that she was right in that, because the type 2 just didn't make a sense. I didn't have the characteristics of it, and but then of course she went straight into worry mode again, because this
now there's something really to worry about now.
Exactly. Now honestly, I was hoping for type 2, because I was type 2 seems easy to manage with diet and everything. I was this type 1 is going to be a lot more of a learning curve.
Right. Isn't it interesting when your expectations start dwindling, what you're willing to reach for? You're
I'm okay with being sick, but not, that sick or something.
I went from living a perfectly normal life for 27 years to wishing for type 2 diabetes. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting how your brain starts bargaining with whatever all of a sudden. So how long ago was that? How old are you now?
I'm 29 now.
Oh,
so
that's just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. Were you married at the time?
I am married, and actually I was engaged to my husband. We've been together for 5 years, but so he's been through all of this with me. And we got married last August, so we're coming up. Actually, in a month will be our 1-year anniversary.
Good for you. When you're diagnosed,
and we have a 3-month-old baby, if you can do that math.
I can do all the math. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You're under 30. You just found out you have type 1. You've been married very recently, and you don't listen to your mom. I understand everything that's happening. Don't you worry. I'm on top of this conversation. I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed today, Katie. I'm good.
Good.
So does it, when you learn that you have diabetes, do you ever have the conscious thought, I wonder if this guy's going to stay with me?
Yes. Actually, I mean, it's kind of sad, but his mom has passed away, and she was really sick, and he took care of her through her cancer treatments. Mm-hmm. And that actually all happened pretty much before we got together. So I got to meet her one time, but I didn't know her. And so of course I had this feeling of he had to take care of his mom. I was I don't want to feel like he has this feeling he's going to have to take care of me. Oh. And so, that's something we had to work through, and we've been in a couple of therapies for a few years now. And, something that we addressed, and it turns out it wasn't a concern of his. It was just myself feeling I didn't want to be a burden.
Wow. That's interesting. So it wasn't him. You answered yes to the question, but it wasn't him. It was you.
It was me. Yeah.
So you thought he already went through an illness. Did you think he wouldn't want to do another one? Or did you think that? I
think I was more concerned for him and his mental state of he already had to go through an illness where he was a primary caregiver. And then so of course his self got put on the back burner. I was like, I don't want him always feeling like he's on the back burner and taking care of somebody else.
Okay.
Health purposes. But of course, like that's why we have these conversations and communicate to make sure that like his needs are being met too. And then we realize like, it's not, like right now, like I take care of my diabetes, like he's very aware, but it's not like a situation where like, he's like, wait on me hand and foot over this or anything, you know?
Yeah. No, I understand. And so your knee-jerk reaction, although very understandable, ended up not really being a concern.
Correct. Yeah, no, he's been great with it. Like he doesn't understand like, how much insulin I need for certain meals or anything, but like he is very accommodating to like whatever I'm asking for. And then like he follows me on Dexcom Follow. And just yesterday I had a compression low and he called me. He's like, you're in the 40s, wake up. I was like, it's not real. It's fine.
Has he been more attentive to it since the baby's born?
I think so, a little bit. Essentially, it's just, me and the baby at home. He was like, that's the last thing I need is like for you to answer your phone when I see this. Katie, I was like, I know.
When my son was born, I realized in a flash that my wife was just a girl I met. And to her, I was just a guy she met. And that baby was hers.
Yep.
And I felt like that baby was mine. And I was like, well, we can't let this girl mess this up. And I bet you she was thinking, I can't let this dumb kid I met mess this up.
Yeah.
Right. All of a sudden you become very aware of where your attachments are 100% and where they are 90%. And it's a very, very interesting to watch it happen as you build a family. And I was just thinking he was probably like, oh, I love Katie, but I don't want her to like pass out and roll over on that kid. So,
well, he's also saying like, I can't do this on my own because he's told me that. Like he was like,
oh yeah,
I need you to take care of yourself because like, he spent an afternoon with him by himself. He's like, I can't do this by myself.
Oh, Katie, I'm sorry. I thought that was implied.
Yeah, that too, and I'm his like milk machine. So like, I got to keep producing that way.
If you don't keep this train rolling, he's going to go broke just buying baby formula.
Exactly. It's pretty expensive from what I hear.
It is very expensive, actually. Diapers too. Like, oh my God.
Yes.
I remember when we didn't have to buy diapers anymore and I felt like we got a raise. I thought,
I bet
we should buy something. We have all this extra money now. Have you ever heard Jenny talk about getting low in a store and while she's holding her baby?
Yeah, she like sat down in a dressing room or something and had to text her husband
right on the floor in a place and started like doing tabs because she's like, I'm gonna go down, and she's like, she got ahead of it.
I've had experience like that in a store with him. I was pushing the stroller and I was just like, and then like reached into the diaper bag and grabbed my jelly beans.
Jelly beans. Oh, nice. Yeah. Donuts aren't very portable. Gvoke HypoPen has no visible needle and is the first pre-mixed auto-injector of glucagon for very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes, ages 2 and above. Not only is Gvoke HypoPen simple to administer, but it's simple to learn more about. All you have to do is go to gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with insulinoma or pheochromocytoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. A few evenings ago, Arden's blood sugar began to drop after she got in bed. I got the little beep beep from her Dexcom. I looked at the graph and I thought, I think this is right, but I want to check. So I pulled out her Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Here's what I did. Got a test strip. I got the meter, a little click on the button, make the light come on. Nice bright light in a pitch black room. I was able to use the meter light to see how to put the test strip in and to see where her little finger was. Then I went click, little squeeze, use the light again to find the blood drop, touch, beep, and seconds later, I had confirmation. Contour Next One blood glucose meter. It is absolutely my most favoritist blood glucose meter that Arden has ever had. Arden's had diabetes since she was 4. She's 17 now. This is the meter for me. And she seems to love it too. It's simple to carry around. easy to use. It has that bright light. The screen is easy to see in light or dark. And it has second chance test strips. So if I were to miss that blood, get a little bit of it, but not all of it, doesn't matter. I could go back and get the rest, and it would not impact the accuracy of the test. And that accuracy, by the way, is legit. That thing matched right up with the CGM, and I was able to make my next decision with a ton of confidence. Head over now to contournext.com/juicebox to learn all about the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. It's possible that you're paying more now through your insurance than you'd be paying in cash if you just bought the thing cashy cash. And the test strips I'm talking about. You got to go find out though. The website, it walks you through the whole thing. There's a little calculator, tells you the whole deal. This meter is legit. It's amazing. I know it's hard to talk about a blood glucose meter like it's amazing, but this one does the job. It does it well. Super accurate, easy to carry, easy to use. Great at nighttime viewing. Love the screen. And if you want a place to keep all your details, the data that comes from those tests, that's not a word, but I'm going to keep going. You can download the free app that goes with the meter. You can use the app or you don't have to use the app. It's entirely up to you. But it's Bluetooth, goes on your phone. You'll see it's there. Go check it out. It's a great little website. Do yourself a favor. Get an accurate meter. You're buying those strips anyway. You might as well get a good one. contournext.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Support the sponsors. Support the show. That was one take, first take, baby. You should buy a meter just for that. Can you believe I just did that? Talented. There is nothing written down in front of me. I was all off my head.
It took me over a year to have a donut again. I was a little scarred.
Oh, I bet you were like, oh my gosh, look what I did with these donuts. Did you have that thought?
Yeah. Well, it was more like just a joke. I was like, donuts gave me diabetes. I understand that's, not the case,
true,
but
yeah.
After looking at since I was such in a honeymoon phase, and doing my own readings, my morning numbers were good. If I had gone in with my fasting number, it might not have been over 100. Mm-hmm. So it was actually a good thing that, I scarfed those.
Yeah. Made 3 donuts. Yeah, made somebody pay attention. Hey, those donuts may have saved your life, Katie.
Exactly. We'll go with that.
That's how we're going to figure. I have to tell you, as you get older and your body tolerates food less and less, which I know is probably hard to wrap your head around when you're 30, but there'll be a day where you eat pizza and you're going to get multiple messages from your body that says, please don't do that again.
I hope not the pizza. I love it so much.
And that's how I think of sweets now. If my body would have had the reactions to food that's not good for me when I was younger, I'd be a completely different person now, because now the idea of having something super sweet like that. It was Arden's birthday last week and we got her cupcakes, and they're not just cupcakes. They're cupcakes from a place where after you pay for them, you think, I don't think cupcakes should cost this much money.
Yeah, $3 a cupcake.
You're like, what's happening exactly?
Yeah.
And there's icing on top of it. It's piled and thick, and it's not just cake. It's got cookies in it. It's just a bomb of sugar. And her friends are over one night and they pull out these cupcakes, and I'm like, well, I'm going to eat a cupcake because it's Arden's birthday and I'm going to eat this cupcake. But as I was eating it, I thought, I don't particularly want this. So, and I just know that if I would have felt that way about sugar when I was younger, I don't know how much different my life would be or not. But I'm just saying, I can't get it in anymore. A little bit of red sauce, and you're like, ooh, I should do that earlier in the day. You start having thoughts like that. It's not fun, Katie. But the highlight of it is that while that's happening to me, my children that I've put my heart and soul in for my whole life are just sitting around me, supporting me and thanking me for being there. That's not what's happening.
Right.
They're
Yeah. You can tell me that some lies get me through the days.
Yeah. They're just going to give you crap constantly and test every fence. They're like the raptors in that Jurassic Park film. They just run around touching the fence so they can find out how to get through it. And that's the good kids. The bad kids, literally the cops show up at your house.
I know. I'm scared.
How were you as a young person? Were you a reasonable person? Were you a
I was a teenage girl, which I'm sure you know what that's like. And it's just, the back talk. Like, I was a good kid as far as like, I didn't like get kicked out of school or have the cops called on the house or anything. But, like I would talk back to my parents and just refuse to do anything like that they said. So I was actually kind of relieved when like I found out we were having a boy, because I was like, I know nothing about boys. Like, I'm sure it's still going to be extremely hard, but I was like, I know how hard I was as a girl. So at least for this first one, I might not have to relive that.
Generally speaking, the hard areas just line up differently across the calendar is all. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So you balance it out with your boy and girl, like different times.
Yes. They're constantly a problem instead of a problem at the same time. but like little boys, you could get one of those really energetic ones and they're something, because they just go, and they're like little like monsters that punch things. Like, if that happens, I mean, I don't know what you're gonna do. But,
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I have some friends that their boys are like that, and it just they run circles in the house, right, just trying to tire themselves out.
I think you just save up a little money, you buy something with a fence outside of it, and you just release them like they're feral, basically. You keep them clean and don't let them escape, and then the law can't say anything to you, and it's fine. So I got that from Parenting Magazine, October 1987. Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit. Like, you've got diabetes. Had you thought about, you weren't married yet, so you probably weren't thinking about babies yet.
Well, yeah, we were already engaged and had planned our elopement. This is time like peak COVID. So like we, and I had always wanted to do an elopement anyways, because the idea of like saying my vows in front of 100+ people just didn't sound like relaxing and like an experience I would like be fully present for. So like it was like perfect excuse. I was like, now I can elope. And so we went out to Colorado and had a gorgeous elopement. But we had been talking about like kids. And of course, like now I'm having thoughts of, well, I think I can manage my pregnancy through this. But then it's the fear of like, well, what are the chances that my kid would have type 1 diabetes? For me, this was a complete shock. No one in my family that I know has it, but my dad was also adopted. Mm-hmm. So there's like half the family history that we're missing there. And so like, I just did some research on like, what are the chances? And then just kind of had to come to like understanding and like comfort with myself of like, okay, like, it could happen, but like, do I want to have a kid more than the fear of him one day having type 1 diabetes?
Right. I gotcha. So how much of that, did it play in at all? Like, was there ever a moment where you're like, I'm not going to have a baby because I don't want that? Or did you not entertain that thought for long?
Yeah. I mean, like it took like a couple of months to like, just think about it. And sorry, he is hearing that I might have not wanted a baby and cry about it.
I knew it.
Yeah. He was like, I knew it was too good to be true.
He's already taking notes about how to get on you when he's old enough to talk.
Cool. So but I found your podcast really early on. And so like, I had already been listening to like episodes with you and Jenny. And then like, the other series you had done with a woman with type 1 in her pregnancy. So I had like, I'm the type of person too that I just dive into research. So like, that's how I comfort myself when I'm like questioning something or just like need to understand it more. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of dove in and like learned a lot. And then I wouldn't say it was too long. I mean, we got pregnant right away after our wedding. So
well, I feel like you said something earlier. You said if you were in a big like wedding, that isn't something you feel like you'd want to be there for and be fully present. And I felt like what you were saying was you'd need to be a tiny bit inebriated in one way or another to get through that.
Oh, for sure.
That's what you're saying. Okay. I want to make sure I understand. So hearing Samantha's story about her pregnancy and listening to Jenny made you feel confident that you could get it done?
Yes. And I had already gotten my A1C down to in the 5s really quickly. And that was with like MDI and we're still honeymooning. So that helped. But I was confident in my ability to manage the pregnancy and that my insulin needs, because that was I was in control of that. The fear was the things I was going to be not in control of, like my son's health one day. So it was never really concerned of like, I wonder if I can manage my type 1 diabetes in pregnancy. Now that I have am here, I am concerned about any future pregnancies. I was like, it's gonna be a lot harder than that first one when like I didn't have, a kid to take care of and I could like pre-bolus the exact time I needed. And now it's like, I don't know when I'm going to eat.
You don't know when you're going to do anything.
No, it's usually noon before I can brush my teeth some days.
Who showed more concern about having a baby, you or your husband?
With concerns of health?
Yeah.
I think I did. He was just kind of like, if it happens, we'll deal with it.
Boys.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't pre-plan anything. That's what I expected to say. I was wondering. So how did you find it? Like first of all, were you just on like a mad tear after you got married? Like did you on purpose make the baby? Let's say it in front of him. Was he an accident, a happy accident? How do you attribute his?
Well, I was no longer on birth control, so we weren't stopping it.
Gotcha.
But also I didn't know like how fast it would happen because I have friends have been, trying for a while to conceive. And so just like, let's not like look at calendar dates to make sure that we're, doing it at the right time. But
right.
Apparently we did.
Lucky you. Well, when you're first married, you're going to hit the time at some point. So
exactly. Yeah.
No, I hear you. So, okay. So it happens. Yay. Everybody's yay. Mm-hmm. How about your mom? Was your mom like, no? Or is she yay? What did she say?
Yeah. Honestly, she was more concerned for my own health. And I think that, she what's that movie that like, I still haven't watched it, where the woman like has type 1 and dies after pregnancy.
Oh, it's the Julia Roberts. Yeah.
What is? Yeah. Yep. So I think she's like seen that movie and like was like instantly afraid or something.
Right. Julia Roberts died in a movie once. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and she's still like, this is so new. It's not like she had been dealing with this with me. Right. Cause I ended up getting pregnant like basically 6 months after the official type 1 diagnosis. So she's still trying to, and like, she's not around me. We live 4 hours apart. So she's not really seeing like how well I'm doing with it. And I think she was just concerned.
Of course. How was your doctor when you were like, when you go to the OB and you're like, hey, I'm pregnant and I just got type 1 diabetes. It's my year. I'm getting all kinds of gifts. Like, did they seem scared?
So unfortunately, it was fortunate at the very beginning. I had the best OB because she was also type 1. And I was like, this is match made in heaven. Like she understands like what I'm going through. And then second trimester, she moves to Texas and I'm not from Texas. So I was so upset. I was like, no, like now I have to start over with somebody who doesn't understand. It ended up being fine, but yeah, I had actually gone to her, before getting pregnant, just to kind of get some consultation on like, what should I expect with type 1 and pregnancy? Like, since I'm so new to this, do you think that if I had a pregnancy now, it would be easier versus if I waited a couple of years? And she was basically like, it doesn't really matter if you wait or have one now, like you're going to have the same challenges regardless. So she was really good in the beginning and talked to my endo, about what my goal should be. And so I definitely prepared. I just didn't know I was preparing for something that was going to happen in the next couple of months. I thought it was going to be for something the next like 6+ months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Jeez. Oh, okay. So you're pregnant. There's no going back. There's no going back. We're good.
Nope.
What's the first, does your insulin, where's my question? Do you feel like you were honeymooning still? Yes. Right.
Yes. What's so crazy. Like, I don't wonder like now, like, if I've gone back to honeymooning or if it's just like the crazy like hormone changes after pregnancy. But pre-pregnancy, I was like Tracebo only like 3 units a day. And then like I basically had to like beg them to give me mealtime insulin because they were like, but your numbers are so good. I was like, yeah, because I'm eating low carb. Like I'm basically on a keto diet. And I don't want to spike because at this point I've, done my own research. I know how bad that can be for my health long-term to have constant highs. So I was like, until you give me mealtime insulin, I'm not going to experiment with food. And then also I wanted to have a CGM and insurance wouldn't pay for it until I'm on at least 3 injections a day. And so I was like, well, if you write me this script for mealtime insulin, then I can also get my CGM. Look at you. Talked my way into that one.
Good job. That's excellent. So do you think maybe if you were to have another baby, it would be a completely different experience? Maybe.
I think so. I think, I ended up going on Omnipod, by the second trimester, just because my insulin needs it. Like at the end of my pregnancy, I was on sometimes 200 units a day. Like I was going through a full pod. Mm-hmm. It got to the point where I was actually giving myself manual injections for bigger meals. So that way I just didn't have to change my pod like every 24 hours.
Okay.
It was a lot. And now I'm not pregnant. Like there's some days where I don't even hit 10 units a day.
Yeah. The breastfeeding has an impact on that.
Yes, definitely. I did listen to that episode. Yeah. I really appreciated that postpartum pro tips series.
Well, I would say
beginning it was like very unpredictable, and now it's just kind of leveled out, which is good.
Right. I would say thank you, but Jenny was like, "We have to."
Oh yes.
She told me, and I was like, "Okay, done. Don't worry about it." I've never argued with her once. Like,
yeah, no, thank you to Jenny for sure.
Yeah. Thank Jenny, because I wouldn't like. There's some episodes where I'm like, "Hey, Jenny, you should talk now," and then I say things that pop into my head as she's speaking. But that's excellent. Well, I'm glad it was helpful to you. So first trimester, and did it ever get really? Did it go backwards? Because you're saying you made like you had to make some big boluses with a needle to hold on to the insulin that was in your pump. And did it at the end, does it trail away again or no?
No, I mean, the resistance was there throughout all of third trimester. I would say the second trimester, I would go like back and forth, like Jenny's mentioned. And I did read her book, the type 1 and pregnancy, which is really helpful because it does talk about how every week, like your body changes, your, little embryo like is changing and, gets into a fetus and all the hormones. And so it was like, you would nail it by Friday and by Monday, it's like a whole new ball of games. Like it was constantly changing. But sometimes I would not need as much insulin for meals. So it's just a constant guessing game. And then hope you get it right, which most part I normally did. Right. And then, of course, the fighting with my endo because she was like, "You're having too many lows." I'm like, "Okay, but..."
What was she calling low?
So, I mean, I would drop down to like 55, but I would also catch it before, like, I would catch it at 60, so it goes down to 55, and then like 15 minutes later, it's back up.
Bounces, yeah.
And I try to explain to her, like, because of my CGM, because of the alerts, like, I know this is happening, and I'd much rather have this low than fight with a high that's not going to come down, especially with this insulin resistance. And, my lowest A1C throughout pregnancy was 4.9. And I was so proud of myself. And of course, I just get like this look of disapproval from her. She was like, "It's too many lows." I'm like, it's just like, you want to be like happy and you want somebody to like be like, "Good job." And then they just say like, "Oh, that's too good."
Yeah. So I started off by saying we should get the entire staff up to the level of the doctors, but we should get the entire staff up to the level of somebody who wouldn't make you feel bad for getting a 4.9 A1C while you're pregnant. Instead, they should be like, "Wow, good for you."
Yes. And I know there's liabilities, and like, she probably doesn't want me to be like, she probably knows like, well, first of all, she doesn't really know me. Like max in the past 2 years, like how much time she spent with me, maybe 45 minutes throughout all of my appointments, because they barely last 5 to 10 minutes. So she doesn't know if I'm somebody who's like, "Oh, I'm going to push it even farther because of how well I'm doing it." So she's, trying to err with caution. But yeah, I think one of the things that was like kind of rewarding and then also like disappointing at the same time was in the hospital, which we can talk about the whole labor and delivery thing too. I had not her on staff as the endo, but somebody from her office. And the other endo came to talk to me. And she was like, "Yeah, Dr. Smith, she says you're a rock star patient." And I was like, "Well, she never told me that." Like, that would have been nice encouragement to have.
All I heard, well, how much of that do you think is that's what you heard? I not just to turn it around for a second. Like, if she thought you were a great patient, but you feel like all she did was tell you what you were doing wrong, is there some blame on both sides? Maybe,
but I mean, honestly, I think, like I said, I barely spent any time with her in the appointment. So like, there wasn't a lot of like pep talk of like, "You're doing great, keep it up." Yeah. And then I would send in my blood sugar weekly for her nurse and team to like analyze. And that was a frustrating part too, because then they would come back with suggestions on like how to correct my ratios and whatnot. I'm like, but all you did was look at my graph. Like, there was no questions about why this high happened, what I was doing beforehand, how long did I pre-bolus, or they'd look at the lows and like, "Well, you're lower on this time." I'm like, okay, that's because I pre-bolus too long, and then but you see it goes immediately right back up, and then it starts to go high because of my meal. And so there's just so much elements missing that like I personally knew based on like, you know, Jenny's book and like the podcast and just like what I just have learned throughout this whole journey. But I was like, you're not really telling me anything. Like, yes, you're checking off that you're looking at my numbers weekly, but if I would have gone based on your suggestions solely alone, I would not have achieved the A1Cs that I did.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Here's my question. Is it harder to be a type 1 while you're pregnant or to be a type 1 while you have a newborn?
Harder in different ways, because while pregnant, it's definitely so much more focus on achieving those really great blood sugars. Now it's like, okay, well, if I'm high for a couple hours, like, yeah, it's not great, but like, you know, I'm only harming myself right now. And I know it won't be like this forever once I get back into a pattern and a routine. And then while pregnant, like I mentioned, like you just change constantly. So like you think, okay, I figured out my ratios. I know how many units I need for this meal. And then next week you have to double the amount of units you need. And that part is just constant, like rework. But being type 1 with a baby, I'm not as focused on myself. And I think that is in general for all new moms, not just type 1 moms, of course. And so it is harder to be as regimented as I was.
Yeah.
But I'll get back there.
Good. Yeah. I would think that you just don't want, like you said, until you get back into a rhythm, you just want to make sure that the rhythm you get into isn't the one. Oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Make noise. So we're halfway through the episode. Is this where you tell me the baby's name is Scott?
No, potential middle name, but it didn't work out.
It's okay. Don't worry. I'll live.
No, his name is Miles.
Oh, that's a good name. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. And the baby noises he's making are so cute.
They are pretty cute.
There are so many men whose wives listen to this show who are going to get lucky tonight because of this.
Yeah, I know. It's like you forget like how cute they can be when like it's the middle of the night and they're screaming and you get peed on and everything. And then I'll look back on my phone of like the thousands of photos I already have of him. I'm just like, oh, you are adorable.
Keep flicking so you don't remember that you smell like pee. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched Cole throw up in Kelly's mouth once.
Oh gosh. I know it's going to happen. You know, thankfully, knock on wood, he hasn't been too much of a spit up baby, but that changes, of course.
It didn't stop him from, you know, it doesn't stop them from saying the stuff that that you're like, oh, I can't believe you would say that. I've dedicated my entire life to keeping you happy. Yeah, it's a fool's errand making a baby, but congratulations. I'm just teasing. You're fine. It'll be.
Yeah, I mean, can't turn back now. It'd be a little complicated.
Can't turn back now. Oh my gosh. Do you ever hear teachers say that, like, you know, that they know when they have a certain number of teachers, just like one of the kids is like a little psychopath, like just by, you know, sheer numbers. You know, you're just, it's funny. We talked about earlier about your brain, like negotiating with like, oh, I'll take type 2, please. You know,
right.
Wait till 5 years from now where you're just like, oh, I hope I don't have the weird kid. I hope I don't have the weird kid.
Yeah, that we had that moment right away in the living room. We're like, oh man, we ended up with an ugly one because, you know, they come out like real squirmy looking, and like we were just like, oh, I just hope he's cute. And like everyone always says your baby's so cute, but no one's going to say you have an ugly baby. And we were just afraid that we would have a baby that only parents could love. And turns out he actually was pretty cute.
I just tried so hard to hold my laugh, and I wonder if you could, if you listen closely, if you'll hear me under my breath like cracking up. Yeah, because their brains, you know, their little heads come out. Like, yeah, they're not quite the shape they're going to be after the little soft part, etc. I'm not a doctor, you understand, but they come out a little squished because your hooch, and I don't mean to use a technical term here, is not the size of a head, so it has to fit through.
Oh yeah, and then covered in gunk and everything. And
oh yeah, it's horrible.
And I had like a 48-hour labor because I had to be induced, being type 1. And so I was so exhausted. It's like almost midnight. And I'm just like, look at him. And I'm like, I feel like I should be crying out of joy, but like,
Can someone
I
take
just
this kid
can't.
so I
Like,
can
I'm
go to
so
sleep?
tired.
Yeah.
I'm just like looking at him. I'm like, so that's what you look like.
All this for that. I'll be damned.
That quickly went away and then it was good. But
I'm sure you were happy at first. Did you have any postpartum depression?
no, not yet. I think I've been taking Zoloft just for my own anxiety issues prior to type 1 and pregnancy. So I took it throughout my pregnancy as well. And so I think that helps baseline me a little more.
Okay.
I also have heard that like breastfeeding can kind of taper off postpartum depression, but then once you end up weaning, the hormones change again, and then you can actually be a risk factor again. So
you just keep an eye out for it.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Oh, okay. Zoloft, you said?
Yep.
Couldn't take it during the pregnancy though, right?
No, I could. It was actually the one antidepressant that I think is like recommended if you're going to be on one to take during pregnancy.
Interesting. Did your dose change during the pregnancy at all?
No, I was already on the lowest dose. And if anything, it probably would have gone up if my needs required it, but I just continued the same dose. And they said the only risk factors for him would that he potentially come out a little more chill. And I was like, well, I'm fine with that. You mean he might not cry as much at the very first couple days?
Yeah. Anything that gives me a break in the beginning, I'm up for. Sounds right.
Exactly.
You are really exhausted when it's over 48 hours. So they induced you and nothing happened?
Yes. So it was protocol that type 1 don't go past 39 weeks. So on week 39, checked into the hospital, still 0 centimeters dilated. My body was not prepared to push out a baby.
Right.
Like if I didn't have type 1 or didn't have to be induced, like I'm sure I would have gone past 40 weeks just because of how not ready my body was.
Yeah.
And so they do, I can't even remember all the ones, but it's like one where they try to like soften the cervix and it stays in for 12 hours. So I check in Monday night, get that. Next morning, nothing had progressed, like still not dilated. The cervix isn't soft enough. So like, okay, we're going to do another one of these. So it's another 12 hours. Second one, still not going great. And at this time I had a nurse, I'm pretty sure was training because she had another nurse following her around the whole time. And she made it very uncomfortable for me, just like pain management wise, because she kind of messed up on this like gel that she used. So I was in a lot of pain already. It's 24 hours and I had already stopped eating because I had to stop once I checked in the night before. So then they were like, okay, now we're going to do this like pill type thing that they put up your cervix to like, those are only 4 hours. So have a couple rounds of that. And then finally start Pitocin Tuesday afternoon after checking in Monday night, and then have him at 11:44 p.m.
Oh,
yes.
Geez. That's a arduous process. And you think if you just would have waited, he would have just popped out on his own probably at some point.
Yeah, I think I would have had like the typical like, oh, my water broke at home and off to the doctor.
There, like, I'm not done yet.
Yes.
You don't want to eat this banana yet. It's got that weird powdery taste still. Wow.
And it's just like, it was nice to have an induction date because like I could prepare, like my parents were able to come into town instead of just like, oh, don't know when this is going to happen. But I definitely was not a fan of the induction process.
Right.
How about
afterwards? What was it like? What were your blood sugars like immediately after giving birth?
So they definitely went back to pre-pregnancy, like pretty much right away. Because in pre-pregnancy, I was more like 1-20 carb ratio. And my basal dropped back significantly where I was like almost just stopped giving, like I was giving the minimum amount at some points on my Omnipod just to like have something going in there. It was just constant up and down. And so then afterwards, like I'm still in the hospital for like 2 days throughout the recovery and everything. I'm getting like hospital food. And then I'm on like diabetes protocol where they have to, even though I have my Dexcom, they have to check my blood sugar once an hour with a finger prick. And they would only do it before meals, never would do it after meals. I'm like, so what's this telling you? And like in the hospital, I knew that they were not going to like the levels that I wanted to be at. And so I actually let myself ride higher just to like get myself out of there. I was like, I'm just going to ride at like 120. Mm-hmm. And there are some meals at like, they would come check it right before. It wasn't like 15 to 20 minutes before. And I'd be at 140. And the nurse would be like, oh, good job. You got good number, like 140 before a meal. Like, I don't think that's good, but like, there was just some things I just had to grin and bear it just to get out of there. I was like,
I'm endlessly fascinated that people give people medical direction based on something random somebody told them once. And she's like, 140, good job. Yes. And then, right. There are people who don't know and who sit there and think, oh, 140, good job. Good. Yeah, that's good now. Did you have...
And this is before a meal. She has no idea what I was after that meal.
Yeah, and the food they feed you is so good for you. So
that was the other thing. It was bad food. And then they gave me the menu each morning. And so I would like want all the muffins and carb-based stuff because I was like, my insulin needs are hardly anything. Let's carb it up. And it would come back and the piece of paper would say like change for dietary needs. I was like, no, who are you telling my dietary needs? They were like, put me on like the diabetic like regimen diet. I was so mad.
This and my time. I'm going to eat a muffin now. And
I know.
You people are killing. Did you have people smuggle your food in?
Oh, for sure. I had pad thai one night and, my husband would go out and get food and everything. And so I definitely ate what I wanted to and controlled it. And then just would tell the nurses like, oh yeah, I gave myself this much insulin.
Did anyone pay attention to your Dexcom during the birthing process, or was it something you used?
So I was really adamant going in that I wanted to be in charge of my diabetes care. I was like, I'm here because you guys are in charge of getting this baby out of me, but I'm the one that I want to be in charge of my diabetes care.
Right.
And I had talked to my OB. My OB was on board. She's like, I agree. She was like, you should be the one managing it. You're the one with it 24/7. I'm comfortable with that. However, the hospital policy is that you have to be on an insulin drip. And I was so upset by that. I was like, I do not want to have someone else be in control when they don't
know what they're doing.
They don't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I talked to my endo, who this all is part of the same hospital center. So they all know the same policies and whatnot. And my endo was not very sympathetic as far as she was like, the insulin drip will be fine. She was not trying to oh, let me see if I can write something so that way you can be in control of it. She kept trying to say well, yeah, you're in control of it throughout the day, but this is a whole new experience. And you want to be focused on labor. I was like, well, I'm getting an epidural, so I'm not focused too much on the pain. I think I'll be able to manage this.
Also, how much time do they think you're thinking about your diabetes constantly?
Right. It's just I need to check it every, my plan then was every 5 to 10 minutes, just check to make sure what's the Dexcom saying? Are we going anywhere?
Right.
So anyways, I get to the hospital and I made it very known. I was like, I'm going to be in charge of my care. I'm going to keep my insulin pump and my CGM on. I even signed documentation saying I wouldn't sue them if something goes wrong. Well, apparently that did not go over well with the hospital. And even though I signed that, they were still very adamant that I needed to be placed on an insulin drip and have my finger sticked every hour, which I was fine, stick my finger every hour. I'm not going to, that's inconvenient for me, but I'm not going to say you can't do that. But it was the insulin drip I was really concerned about.
Right.
And then since I had such a rough 24 hours trying to get some dilation going with all those cervix treatments, I was so exhausted. I had no sleep the entire time. I'm in an incredible amount of pain. And my OB comes in and she's like, hey, they weren't going to start the epidural until after Pitocin when it starts to get really bad. She's like, you're exhausted. You're already in all this pain. Let's start the epidural now while we continue to wait for your cervix to soften. And Pitocin wasn't going to start until later that day. And I was like, okay. And I felt good. She's like, but if you do this if I do this for you, we're going to have to get you on an insulin drip because they're not happy about wanting to manage it yourself. And so after 24 hours of no sleep, I just gave in. I was like, fine.
If you're going to drug me, I'm okay with whatever you say next.
Yeah. I was like, fine. I was like, she was like, you'll still have your Dexcom on. So and you'll know what your sugars are. And I actually had a really great team of nurses for the actual delivery, not minus the nurse that put me in all the pain in the beginning. Where every time she did a finger stick and would plug it into, so it's called a Glucommander is the system they called it. I'm not sure if this is in other hospitals, but it's the insulin drip that actually has a drip of glucose in it too. So she would once an hour type in what my blood sugar was, and then it would give a reading of what the basal should be. And so she knew how stressed I was about this, giving over that control. So she would always tell me, she's like, it's telling me I should adjust you from 0.3 to 0.4. And I would look at my Dexcom and I would like, that's the exact same adjustment I would make. So I felt comfortable. Like she would like, not necessarily confer with me that it was the right thing to do, because I think she would have done whatever it said to do. But the fact that she was like allowing me to be part of it. And then it ended up working really well, where I was within 10 points of 100 the entire time I was like, in active labor.
So you were like, give me the Glucommander forever.
Yeah. And, and I think I've heard you mention on a podcast before that the next like evolution of pumps are probably going to be like a little bit of a glucose strip too, because when you start to go low, instead of needing to, have a juice box, if it just puts in a little glucose in for you, like it can keep you really steady. And that's basically what this machine did.
Yeah.
So I hated to admit in the end that I was like happy with it and would do it again because I put so much fight to like be in control of it myself.
Can I take this home with me?
Yeah. But like it was giving the same basal rates that I would have suggested based on, how I'd been managing.
Yeah.
So
that's
it worked out.
I actually just looked it up. It's a medical device. It's a whole system.
Mm-hmm.
It's really kind of fascinating. Yeah, you should have probably shut up and taken that like 24 hours before.
I know. And then I could have gone through all the like not having the stress and
yeah, you say, look, I want to take care of this myself. Unless you have by the way, the name is just I'm looking at the name of this thing, and the person who named this must have just been in geek heaven when they came up with it. Because it's GLU Commander. It's Glucommander.
Yes.
They must have been so pleased with themselves. They're like, oh, we'll call it the Glucommander. It'll be amazing. But no, I had never heard of that before. That's pretty amazing. And yeah, there are places working on pumps that are, considered dual chamber that have insulin and glucagon. I think that, I don't know anything, meaning nobody's told me something that you don't know, but I think the advent of stuff like Gvoke, Glucagon, that it's liquid stable, is a big step towards that, because I know that years ago they tried this with the glucagon that was available on the market, and it didn't last in the pumps. It just it degraded too quickly. So now that it won't degrade, will people start looking into it more? Maybe. I still don't understand about the delivery of it, if I'm being honest. But it's got to be worth people looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Like
and I wonder what they use in this machine at the hospital. As far as if it was just like a glucose like drip in general that they just hooked up there, but
that might have just been giving you glucose and insulin. Plus, they're mainlining it to you, so it's way more efficient. They're probably using smaller amounts to move you around. That's really listen. Cool. I'm glad people are working on things, and I'm glad you had a good time, but I understand you wanting to be in charge of it yourself.
Yes. I feel like, especially like everyone who listens to your podcast, part of the Facebook group, I know that we all feel like we are a lot more empowered and educated within our own diabetes routines and regimens, that it's just so hard to like surrender that. Sometimes especially when you have experiences where like, 144, that's a good blood sugar right before your meal, or you're 4.9 while you're pregnant. That's too low of an A1C. So like, listen, you get some distrust for sure.
Katie, I'm going to tell you a secret. Okay. Let's make sure nobody's listening. I think it's been a couple of years now, so I'm probably okay. But Arden had a little cyst removed from near her fallopian tube in a procedure that I think, soup to nuts took 35 minutes. I think Arden was only out for about a half an hour. And it took me a couple of nurses. I had to explain it to a couple of different nurses till I hit on one who's like, my friend's got diabetes. And then suddenly they're like, yeah, do whatever you want. I've heard those words before. It's very interesting how it worked, but at the very end, I was speaking to the doctor and I was like, look, this is a automated system, because Arden was using a loop at that point. And I said, it's doing it for her. Like if it notices her blood sugar going up, it's going to give her insulin. If it notices her blood sugar going down, it's going to take insulin away. Like it's going to keep her really. And she goes, okay. But can you shut that automation off? And I was like, oh yeah, you can shut it off. I could just give her a constant basal rate and it won't take away. She goes, let's do that during the procedure. I was like, okay. And then Katie,
you didn't do it.
I didn't. I left it.
Yeah. Yes.
I was like, let me shut that off for you. Click, 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 click. Here you go. Keep this phone near her in the operating room. They put it in like this sealed bag, and they kept her phone near her in the operating room. I said it's within Bluetooth distance, closer the better. And I even showed them on the screen. I was like, if this gets red, it's not connected. Get it closer to this, to her. I showed them where the Dexcom was, the whole thing. But yeah, I left that algorithm run. And her blood sugar was terrific during that procedure. So
that's like basically what I would do when I had my weekly blood sugar check-ins with the endo office. They'd be like, "Oh, you're high around here. Change this basal rate to this," and I'd just say, "Okay, thanks," and then still continue to do what I felt was best.
when we walked out of the room, when they took Arden away, and Kelly and I were like, well, "Let's go downstairs and we'll get something." We basically went to the cafeteria and stared at Arden's Dexcom follow-up. That's pretty much what we did. So we're walking down the hall and the nurses are going one way with Arden and we're going the other way. And it's very tense, because it's just a little procedure, but stuff happens, so you're really worried. And my wife goes, it was cool of her to leave, to understand the algorithm, everything. And I understand her wanting it to be off. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't turn it off. My wife's like, what are you doing? I was like, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Because if something did go wrong, you could jumped in and turned it off. Well, no, I guess at that point you couldn't know.
Well, it's with loop. So I did have Night Scout, so I could have made adjustments to her basal if I needed to remotely. So I paid attention.
So it's a 30-minute procedure, you said, so it wasn't.
Yeah, but they could have gotten in there, and there could have been like a Tonka truck in there or something weird, and it could have taken longer, right? And did I do the wrong thing? In hindsight, yeah, probably. But, but during that procedure, her blood sugar tried to rise and it stopped it. So did I do the right thing? Turned out to be, if she was going to be in there longer, I might have tried harder to talk her into leaving it on. And maybe I would have shown her how to shut it off. But this was a half an hour. I was like, I'm rolling the dice here. So anyway, this is definitely not medical advice, this part.
Ignore your doctors.
No, plus I know nothing. People, listen closely. My senior year of high school, I missed 53 days of school. Oh my gosh. I went to work instead of going to school. 53 of the those days. You probably shouldn't even be listening to this podcast. Honestly, you may. I think
there's only 100 and some days at school anyways, right?
Yeah, you're probably breaking a law by listening to me. So what do you think of that? So anyway, is there anything that we have not spoken about that we should have? And will the baby make any more cute noises, or is he asleep?
He's currently asleep, but I can see those eyes
dancing.
Squint. Yeah, they're darting back and forth underneath the eyelids. So no, I think I just really wanted to kind of share how my experience was while pregnant, and then especially the labor and delivery, because I think that was the thing I was missing the most. Your podcast and everything is great. I almost wish there was a subgroup for pregnant juice boxers. So that way, because I was in some pregnancy type 1 diabetes Facebook groups, but it's not the same information and support you get from the Juicebox community.
Yeah.
And so I'm really thankful that you and Jenny had been doing more episodes about pregnancy, so I could use the bold with insulin methods
for that
in this new way.
That's great. That's very cool. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Does Miles' eyelids still have the little white dots on them, or is that gone?
White dots? No.
Yeah, how their skin looks like little plucked chickens at first?
Oh, yes. And then all the baby acne and everything.
Yeah, that's gone?
Yeah, for the most part.
No. I can't believe your kid coos. Wait till it curses at you.
With my husband's mouth, that's going to be before he's
you look that baby in the face right now and try to imagine that there will be a day when it looks right at you and goes,
yeah. Oh, I know it. Yeah, I've actually told my husband, I'm like, hey, maybe let's practice not cursing so much around him. So that way when the time comes, you don't have to just cold turkey it. He was like, I have to cold turkey cursing. I was like, well, I'd like him not to have his first words. So it can be curse words.
You don't want the first ones to be good. I made the decision that I wasn't going to change. And Kelly was like, you should not be cursing in front of the kids. And I was like, I know, but I love to curse so much, Katie. It's hard to put into words. So.
I think that's how my husband is too. And like, I mean, to give him credit, like he is a very respectable adult in the business place. It's not like he's just around cursing. Like he knows how to act. And like, so even though he grew up like in his family, like probably cursing, and I don't know if he was allowed to curse or not, but like he knows how to act. So like you can teach a kid that like, you don't just get to talk like this.
I want every man to listening to hear how we're spoken about. He knows how to act. Like he's almost like, he's like, oh, he won't pee on the rug if we're only gone for an hour. Don't worry about it. He knows what to do. Listen, I'm not saying that I'm in the grocery store trying to reach the eggs and you're in front of me. I'm like, motherfucker, get out of the way.
Right.
But, like, in my mind, I might be thinking it.
Exactly.
But no, actually, being honest, as I get older, that goes away too. It must be it must be testosterone.
You're not as strong, so the
like
compulsion isn't there.
Yeah, I don't feel like I have to kill, conquer, or make something pregnant anymore. Like it's a much chiller way to be.
You just given up a little more.
It's not even a give up. It's just like you don't have these desires to do those things. Like but I can definitely see how people my age start talking about you need to find other things to do with your time.
Some hobbies.
Well, because do you want to be depressed for a second, Katie? I mean, you've got some soul off going. You can handle it.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
So, I'm done. I'm almost done doing all the things I'm supposed to do. Like from a nature perspective, right? Like I saw a girl, thought she was pretty, tricked her into having sex with me, made a baby, kept the baby alive, and now more up to date terms. I'm paying for college, so, supporting them as they figure things out. Like there's going to be a moment, right, where Cole's 21. Like it's probably going to happen in the next, I'm guessing 4 years, where he's just going to like have a job and make his own decisions. And when something comes up, he's going to ask somebody in his life, not me. And Arden's not far behind him. So then what is my purpose after that?
Well, you wait for the random phone calls you get. Cause I mean, that's true. Like once I started like my own career and everything, it's like you've become so much less dependent on your parents, but there's still times when like the dishwasher's broken. You're like, I gotta call my dad.
Yeah. So that's real world stuff. But I mean like circle of life stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Well, then you become a grandparent, maybe.
I don't know what that means. They're not going to. I just told you they're judging everything you're doing. They don't want you near the kid. True. They're going to be like, oh, he's going to screw that kid up like he screwed me up. Like that's exactly what they're going to think. We were so close to calling this Scott Makes a postpartum lady cry, but you handled that pretty well. So, and I wasn't trying to make, as I'm saying it, I was like, I shouldn't be saying this to her. She's probably still flooded with hormones. And I'm like, what's your real purpose, Katie? Aren't you going to be useless in 20 years?
I think right now it's still so far for me to even imagine that it's not hitting too close to home yet. Cause like right now I'm just like, can we get through the night?
No, I completely understand. There is no reasonable way for you to imagine what I'm talking about where you are. If you would have said that to me when Cole was 3 months old, I wouldn't be able to conceptualize anything you were saying. I would have thought, no, I'm going to be alive forever. My whole life is going to take forever, And it turns out, like, a couple of bad years at ER, and the next thing you know, it's 10 years later. You know what I mean?
I mean, I understand that. I don't understand because people would tell me like how much changes once you have a baby, and like, I wasn't able to like picture it. And then it is like this feeling of like, nothing could ever prepare you for what changes whenever you become a parent. And so I have no doubt that there'll be plenty more experiences like this as he gets older. That's like, I could not have been prepared for this, even if you would have told me exactly what was about to happen.
Yep. You have to absolutely believe that the passage of time brings understanding, and that's wonderful. And the passage of time makes you older and allows you less time to use your understanding, and that's terrible. Like there are these Like everything in nature is competing. Like everything. Like we've been joking about it for an hour, but you're going to love this kid so much and that kid's going to know it. And yet you're going to have conversations where you're like, I don't understand why is this even happening? Like why when your kid hits 20 do they suddenly feel like, well, I have to push away from these people a little bit. Like I have to prove to the world, to myself that I can do this thing. And as it's happening, and it will feel terrible to you, you'll also have this amazing feeling of, oh, look, he's becoming independent. Everything's happy and sad at the same time. There's no main line. There's no life heroine where it's just like pure, like, this is probably as close as that comes to that, is that baby. So soak it up. It's really, really cool. You're going to have such an amazing experience. And I wish you nothing but excitement and happiness, and I hope the kid's first words aren't son of a bitch, but other than that,
they probably will be. No, but I really appreciate that. I am trying to take time each day to be like, hey, it's not always fun, but let's enjoy some 30 minutes here and there. The
most honest and trite words I've ever spoken in my life, and many people speak them as well, is it goes by really fast. So you do your best to slow it down, I guess. But try not to slow down the bad parts. Don't let those go by really quick and slow the good parts down.
The 2 a.m. scream fest, or, that can leave.
Oh, that's terrible. Does that happen?
Yeah, he doesn't like to have his diaper changed in the middle of the night, which I get. But when you're having a blowout, it can't really just let you sit in it.
I got to be honest with you. I've never, as an adult, pooed myself in my sleep. But if some lady was to take off my underwear in the middle of the night, I think that would be fine.
Yeah, but maybe frightening if you're still asleep.
I'm probably thinking of it differently than Miles is too. I'm guessing probably the cold air just hits him and makes him upset, I would imagine.
I think so. Yeah, it's just a startle of I was asleep in my bassinet and now I'm on the changing table. What happened?
Yeah, no kidding. You flop them up there like a ham. You're like, oh, yeah. Babies poo on themselves. It's great.
Oh yes.
All right, Katie. Listen, we're gonna end like this.
Okay.
You never considered even for a second naming him Scott once?
Afraid not.
Okay. It never even popped up as a joke.
No, I did not. But we're stuck on a middle name for a long time, so I should have tried harder to make it a contender.
No, you shouldn't. I'm not pushing for it. I just wanted to know seriously if there was a conversation where you ever looked at your husband and went, are we under any obligation to name this baby after the guy who made the podcast?
Yeah. He probably would have, felt a little weird about that.
You would 100% think so.
Yeah, I'd look at his son and be like, "Your name after a man that I really have no concept of."
I think someone named their dog my last name. So to that person,
that's a good name for a dog.
Close enough. I take it. I'm done. I'm done pushing for these babies. I just really wanted to. I seriously, as crazy as it sounds, I just wanted to know if even in passing you were ever at a restaurant and you're like, you want to name him Scott after the guy on the podcast? He asks about it all the time. And so I'm glad it didn't, by the way. It shows good mental health on your part.
Yeah. I don't have some what's it? That syndrome whenever you're kidnapped. I
think the way
when you fall in love with your kidnapper type of deal.
Yeah. I have to Google because my brain just went blank. Hold on a second.
What's it called?
As soon as it pops up, I'm going to feel stupid for not knowing it. Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, I have Stockholm Syndrome with this podcast. I need a name for son.
Is a condition in which hostages develop a psychological bond with their captors during captivity. This term was...
I'm listening to you several hours a week, so it might work into that.
Should I start whispering commands in between words? Do you think that would work?
You never know. You do have quite the power if you ever tried to... change it for something a little evil.
Let's try it here, Katie. U.S. residents with type 1 or caregivers of type 1 should go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and fill out the survey.
There you go.
I just did that because I get paid for that. I'm just teasing. Yeah. I also think it's a really great... Let me be clear now that I said it out loud and we all know I'm not going to edit anything out. I think the T1D Exchange is a really, really amazing organization. And I do want more people to add their data to it so that better decisions can get made for people. Look how quickly I got serious. So better decisions can be made for people with type 1. But I do get a little money when you do it.
I've done it. I went and registered. So
Katie, thank you.
I support it.
You bought me lunch. I appreciate that.
I did.
Thank you. We haven't missed anything?
I don't think so.
Cool.
This is great. I can't wait to hear where you drop the ads throughout this podcast.
You're a real listener.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You care. Like I the one I put up today with Chris Dudley.
So I just started automatically playing after my last podcast. I was like, maybe not listen to a podcast right before our interview, you know.
Yeah, you don't want to do what he did. But I asked him what it was like to play with Michael Jordan right before the ad.
Uh-huh.
But I let him answer a little bit before the ad played. And as I was finishing making the ads, I said aloud on the recording, I was like, there's no way anybody thought I wasn't going to cut him off as soon as I asked the question. But I was like,
for sure,
that seemed mean. So yeah, I'm a product of the 80s. I know about cliffhangers. I once had to wait an entire summer to find out who shot JR. So what do you think of that?
Yeah. Don't have to do that now, Netflix.
Those are words that are meaningless to you and most people listening. But hopefully we'll see that pop up on Google. Who shot JR? People will be like, what does that mean? Yeah. Anyway, go find out. Also, okay. I wish it had anything to do with your episode because I would totally call the episode Who Shot JR. But instead, I'm leaning towards stuff like it took miles and miles to ripen Katie's cervix. So I don't think it's going to work out. But the words cervix ripening are the least attractive words I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah, you're right.
And I imagine they are to you too now that you have context for what it means.
For sure.
Oh my God. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go so that we don't start talking about putting a pill in your vagina.
Yes.
A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. You use a blood glucose meter all the time. You might as well use an accurate one that is easy to carry, easy to use, and easy to see at night. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Get yourself a Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Oh, and a little heads up, there's a big episode coming up very soon. Make sure you're subscribed in your audio app, wherever you listen, your podcast app, Apple Music, Spotify, where else might people listen? Amazon Music, wherever your app is. If you're just like, I listen when I listen, hit subscribe or follow, depending on your app, because you don't want to miss what's coming. I promise. I'm holding my hand up like I was in a courtroom on a television show, and I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And there's a big show coming up. If you're subscribed, you won't miss it. Let me be clear. When this episode I'm talking about pops up in the future on the front of your little phone, you see it pop up, your little heart's going to skip a beat. You're going to go, what's happening? I got to call out sick. Hello? I can't come to work today. I need to listen to the, no, I'm sick. Then you hang up the phone. You're not really sick. Turn on the podcast and you listen like intently. You probably sit in a dark room with your eyes closed so you can focus. Because that's the big deal that I'm talking about here. I got stuff coming. What am I saying to you? What am I saying? Listen to me. Get closer. Subscribe or follow in your podcast app. Trust me. When I'm this close to the microphone, it feels very intimate, even for me. So I'm freaking myself out. So I'm going to go.